We are first going to get started. Haitao here, he's going to talk about the game Dota. 海涛，你可以介绍。
So, Haitao, would you please tell us how to play Dota? It's one of the most well-known esport. First of all, how many of you have heard about esports? Can we have a show of hands? Quite a lot. Esports is a new type of sport, and Dota is one of the events. In recent years, with the increasing popularity of casual lifestyle among young people, Dota becomes very popular, and it's really phenomenal. It has a large audience. People talk about the highest level of competitions of Dota every year. Uh, Last year, we had the 8th global tournament, and the final bonus would be 25 million US dollar. You know, this is, let's say, a very high number, even if you think about traditional sports. I mean, the highest price is not provided by the sponsors. The sponsors offer like $1 million as an initial price, but during the games, these sponsors offer some value-added services, some weapons, but they will not affect the balance of the games. So they offer the weapons, and 25% of the proceeds by selling these weapons would be part of the price. So the more weapons you sell, the price will be higher, and it grows, snowballing from 1 million to 25 million. And this year marks the ninth tournament. It will be held in Shanghai. We expect that the final grand prize will be over 30 million. Dota is actually a new type of world, and it's a mental and skillful competition. You can accumulate your, prize financially by defeating your components, and finally win the game. So it's one of the popular ways of socializing and gaming. Panje, you are the strongest woman in esports in China, and your club LDG is one of the best clubs in the world. In recent years, we noticed that many venture capitalists tap into esports, meaning the second rich generations began to open clubs. Like Wang Sicong, you're not a second rich generation and you are a girl. So, considering that reality, how do you maintain the strength of your club? Our club has been there for 9 years. Like you said, how can we keep us competitive? I think what matters is the training of young talents, young players. Before we were established, I mean 9 years ago, we started to select the best young players, and including the player who is playing now for us. He is one of the youngest talents that we started to train 9 years ago. You know, by using data, we have an in-house data team. We designed a gaming platform. We use data analytics. So these potential young players will be able to compete on our platform, and we will select them according to the different positions in the game. We will analyze the detailed data in the game so we can select the best players. So these players in different positions can be complemented each other. So we can have a long process of selecting talents. We also work closely with many sponsors by building their official training program. Like Tencent, we help them train these talents for League of Legends. If one day there is a rich guy thinking that your club is doing very well, do you fear that they may poach some of your players? Actually, in China, we have very established league of esports players. In every league, we have very established rules of transfers of players, and transfers must be done in the window period, and they must be mutually agreed by two clubs. For example, if you offer a price, and if I agree, my player will be transferred to your club. The highest transfer will be in 50 million RMB. Haitao, let me ask you, 10 years ago, people didn't talk about esports. People talked about playing games, and it was ridiculous to say playing games can make you money. So when was the inflection point? When was the capital flow into your industry, serious capital? So how do you make money actually? I think there are a few milestones which are very important. In 2014, Twitch, the broadcasting platform, was acquired by Amazon at $1 billion. And that was a triggering point in China when it comes to broadcasting, live streaming of esports. So many investors started to note that there were plenty of business opportunities in esports. In the morning, we know Mr. Li Kaifu was here in this forum. Mr. Li and Sequoia were among the earliest investors in our company. So these VCs were very savvy to note the opportunity in esports back then. Wang Sicong, the son of the richest guy in China, tapped into esports later. His entry actually bodes for the interest of the traditional capitalists for esports. The son of the Stanley Ho and people like Emperor in China, in Hong Kong, they were so interested in esports. And probably people who work in real estate industry would tap into esports as well, because they need to compete with these people. There was something from a Chinese movie, and it says it doesn't matter which position you need to build your house. What matters is to follow those people who know this industry well. So 10 years ago, people were talking about playing games, and they talked about child who played games, and they were like a bit like bad children, but people like these capitalists, they knew better than ordinary people. And when these so-called post-80s and post-90s started to play esports seriously, and they would be more recognized by the society. If we compare esports with traditional sports, we know traditional sports rely on sponsorship, like commercial sponsorship. So, in your idea, how much percentage is from sponsorship when it comes to esports? Some friends used to see esports and traditional sports separately, but if you look into esports, you will find it's actually part of traditional sports. The difference is that it's younger, and the models include clubs, sponsors, TV stations, and the event organizers. We even have, gaming industry, gambling industry. This is no difference with traditional sports. So when the sponsors come in, what they're thinking about is that they would lead to a much younger audience than traditional sports. If we are talking about Olympics, I mean the audience is in their 50s, but esports spectators are in their 20s. So if you want to, interact with these people, esports is the best way to kick in. LGD is working with PSG, the French football club. Can you tell us a bit more about the cooperation? Did they invest in your club? Yes, we worked with PSG in a way of branding. For us, they are a well-known football club internationally. So if we work with their brand, we can make us more well-known internationally. And for them, they can, through the club as a platform, have a more impact on young audience because they need more young fans and they need more Chinese fans. They will rely on China as a good market for their training of young footballers, and they need more Chinese fans. For example, they're building sports parks in Shanghai, and this is a way to increase their influence among young people in China. By doing that, we can work together by building each other's brand stronger. It makes a lot of sense for both sides. For us, our club will be very well known internationally, and our commercial value will be unleashed. Speaking of commercial value, China's Dota teams have been playing very well, but Navy from Russia is not a good performing team, but many people flock to watch them. So for Dota, if we are talking about tournament international, is it important for you commercially? Is it really important? Why does Navy have so many friends? For Navi, I think it's a team, a very respectable team, and we should learn from them. In some early competitions like TI, they performed very well, and they were champions for several times. In recent years, they have not been doing that well, but they've been doing a good job in building the brand as a club. For example, they trained Venti, one of their players, very well, and they built their plan based on the characteristics of this player. This player is very amusing, is very funny, and this player has very good engagement with their fans, and he is willing to tell the fans about what's true about him, and this is what the club tries to make use of, and these star players will have very good engagement online with fans, and they work with international media. So for a club, I think performance is one of the best things, of course. For a club, we're talking about two things. One is brand, and the other is monetizing the brand. Like I said, why am I able to sustain the brand so long? That is because we trained a lot of young talents, and these talents must deliver good results from the competitions. And only by doing that, we can turn a brand into a good one, and we can interact with fans, increasing the commercial value. In China, we often say in esports, if you are a newbie and you don't play well, that's a sin. So for a club, we must do a good job in competitions, and we must have championship in world arenas. Thank you. So my next question is, now China's government has many rules about esports. For example, PUBG of Tencent has not yet obtained the license from Chinese government. So, what do you think the Chinese regulations will have an impact on esports? I believe the recent development of esports is very extensive. We know these things which make you happy will make you addicted to. You know, we can't imagine that a child will say, I like study more than esports. That's impossible. So I think the government has reasons to regulate esports. For example, some violent games in China were very much, the children, especially those in rural areas, have easy access to these violent games. So we have to regulate them. But for esports, if there are some projects who cannot obtain the license from the government, it cannot be monetized, so it will not be good for them financially. But this is something that we can solve through discussions. We have to adapt ourselves to the policies. For example, we can tap into some greener and healthier models of games. I mean, esports is not about killing or violence. Esports is just making use of these electronic equipment to compete both skillfully and mentally. So we can tap into new models of competition, which would be funnier and more amusing. So if we can keep it competing and we can involve more audience, that would be good. For example, recently there is a popular game about chess, which is also on the rise. And our company is very lucky, and we have obtained the franchise of this game despite the competitions of Tencent and other companies. So probably we can elevate the game to these mega sports events like Olympics, like Asian Games, so they can be real part of the traditional games. I mean, our Dota player is still playing, so can we have him on the stage as well?
我们看一下，
His MMR is 8,000. Some fans told me that this number was one of the top level. Hello, Yuhang. Question. Now, you are dressed like a sportsman and you're playing e-games, esports. So can you give us a bit sense about what you do every day? When do you get up every day? We usually go to our training room at 1 p.m. every day. We had a simple meal before training. So we have 2 battles every day. Each battle has 2 rounds. And then we will have some training sessions. You have a coach, right? You have a coach to review your performance today, giving you some feedback, right? You also have a manager. Can you tell us what manager does? The manager would take care of us from in day-to-day lives, and when we were playing in the competitions, he will buy tickets, air tickets for us, and the coach will give us feedbacks after every battle. You started playing Dota when you were very young. In these years, as you know, mobile phones have been very popular in esports. Do you think Dota will be replaced by some mobile games? Why are you still playing PC games? Compared with mobile games, Dota is more operable. It values teamwork. When you are watching Dota games, it's much more fun to watch than mobile games. When you were selected to LDG, how old were you then? Now you live in the base of LDG. Yes, you live in the LDG base. I came to LDG last year. I was in other clubs before that. When I was 18 or 19, that I began to be a professional player. Back to you guys. Do you think that mobile games will replace traditional esports like Dota? I think there are a few stages in the development of esports. It was only an esport in the beginning. However, with the emergence of leagues, clubs, live streaming platforms, so the fans may get access to the games. In this way, esports will be more like a real sports event. For example, PC games like Dota. Maybe there are not so many people playing it. Probably if you look at the online players, there are only 1 million or something. But many spectators are still watching them. So there are many fans, spectators who are willing to pay for it. I mean, they pay for watching the game. They pay for obtaining the content of this esports. Our club has PC games, and we also have mobile games. I think the difference is that they cater to different age groups. As for PC games, their fans are a bit older. And they're more loyal to watching games, and they're more willing to pay for the games. Let me add something. When we are talking about games, games are actually collections of rules. The earliest type of sport was running. I mean, who ran faster would be the champion. And later we had more rules. So that's why many types of sports emerged. But for esports, it's more complicated. And because of that, there will be differences between ordinary players, top players, professional players, and the super professional players. So when there is such difference, we can assess who is stronger. But for mobile games, it's simple, and people will not make a difference. But for PC games, these top players would be much better than laymen. So it's much more fun to watch. But for mobile games, it's easier, and you can play it everywhere or on the go. I think PC games and mobile games will coexist for a very long time. I don't know much about esports, but it seems to me that esports like Dota, for example, if you are Chinese, you need to register with your ID card, but anyone can play mobile game, right? Yes, theoretically it's right, but you have ways to hack into the system without showing your ID card. But I cannot say. I mean, we cannot separate the child with games just by allowing them, just by asking them to show their ID card. I mean, this is not something that we can talk about here. For example, they can use their parents' ID cards to register, and their parents would not have the chance to find it out. So this is why I must say government regulation is necessary, because some violent games will not be good to children. If you have children, I'm sure you understand that very well. If there is a game which is very green and healthy, and at the same time it will bring you fun and excitement, that will be the best game. If we are talking about mobile game, I mean, you can play the games with a phone. You don't need ID card or you don't need a WeChat account, right? But in China, you are required to register with an ID card. But you know there is always to circumvent the policies, so it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult to segregate the games with children just by employing the policy. I mean, PUBG, can a toddler play it? Yes. In China, many venture capitals flow into esports clubs, but it's not cheap. I mean, you need tens of millions to start a club. So what are the expenses? I believe Ruru knows better than me. First of all, to build an esports team, you need to have good players. These players are worth a lot of money. It depends on what kind of teams you are talking about. If it is a professional team, you need to pay for the players. For example, if it is Dota, a team should at least have 5 players, 1 coach, and probably 1 data analyst. The top players will cost over 10 million per player. After you build a team, you need to put your team in the professional leagues. To join these professional leagues, you need to pay for the registration. You need to pay for the quota. And it doesn't mean that you can buy quota with money. For example, when it comes to League of Legends, every year there were only 2 places, and you need to get it by bidding. And one quota will cost like 100 million RMB. For other games like Overwatch, their league OWAR, a place in the league would cost $36 million. That was in last year. So you need to spend some money to build a team, and you need to buy a place from the league to compete in the league, so your fans will know your players. Besides, your investment for the team must be long term. You will have different lineups of players. You need new blood. You need to build your team of young people. And these players may have different level of performance depending on the conditions. So you need substitutes. So as you can see, the threshold to build an esports club will be very high.